Tradition, I don't know what it is, Danny, but we start off our show this week on a Tuesday. Danny Kelly from The Ringer. You guys know that. You don't need me to tell you that. Senior staff writer, Ringer Fantasy Football Show. He's got the Ringer Draft Show. It's all brought to you by Georgetown Brewery, locally owned and operated. They've got Manny's, they got Bodhisattva, they got Lucille, they got Rodgers, all of it, all of your favorite beers. Tap room is open 10 a.m. To 8 p.m., all brought to you by GeorgetownBeer.com. But the Mariners hat, I mean, we are, and you would agree with this, we are in an abusive relationship with them.
Yeah, I would call myself a lapsed Mariners fan in the same way as like a lapsed like Catholic or whatever. Like, I don't care as much as I should. Probably I wear the hat because of tradition, and like I've always just worn a Mariners hat. I try and represent this area, but like I don't know. I actually don't call myself a Mariners fan. They make it hard on us, don't they? Yeah. There's some exciting young players on the team, obviously, but it's just like it's the same thing. You know, it's like you said it was an abusive relationship. It's like they tell you the same thing every time we come back. They tell you the same thing. They whisper like the right things in your ear, and then every year at the end, it's just like, oh, that was the same old thing. You
get excited, and then with, you know what? And it's an abusive relationship because I'll spend 6 months just killing them.
Yeah,
and I hate you guys. I watch you every night, or I listen to you, and then I swear them off at the end of the year. But you know what happens? This is what happens, and it's usually Chris Egan from King 5. He's who I blame. Because he goes down to Peoria for spring training, and he takes a cameraman down there, and the first shot they have is the camera on the ground, and then the guys are all walking out from the facility, and their spikes are hitting the dirt and the cement, and it makes that sound, and I go, oh, it's back.
Yeah.
Oh, and then they're filming them throwing bullpens and the ball into the mitten. And I'm like,
it's just nostalgia. You're falling for nostalgia, man.
I'm back in 92 wins, chance for the postseason. God.
Yeah.
They're like the Seahawks. You know what? Here's why they're like the Seahawks. And we're going to get into this. We're going to run the ball more. And we're going to be physical. And that's our identity of our team, is being physical and running the ball. God, it's nonstop have to hear that. And then we haven't talked since the Thursday night game, and that's all we heard about, how they're going to establish the run and they're going to be physical. And, I mean, I guess, Danny, to their credit, they tried to, but it didn't work.
Yeah. I mean, you can only do what you can with the people that you have on the team, right? And I don't know if they have the horses up front to really be like a establish the run type of football team. They don't. Right? I mean, that's where it all starts. I know it's you do a lot of NFL shows and talk to a lot of people, and we're all guilty of this. We all try to sound smarter than we are. Sure. This cover twos, zone dog blitz coming, Bob, whatever it Drop
is.
Some jargon. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? It's just who's better up front. That's who wins the game. It's
always like that. Yeah.
It's always
who's healthier.
That.
Yes. Who's healthier and who's better up front?
Yes, that's just it honestly is one of the simplest explanations of all of sport. It's just who's better up front. The problem with these guys is they've been searching for offensive linemen since 2014.
Yeah. But the problem is every team is searching for offensive linemen. Like, there's very few good offensive lines in the NFL right now.
Who's considered the best?
I honestly don't even know off the top of my head.
Detroit? Detroit
yes.
comes to
mind. I would say Detroit is like the gold standard right now.
Okay.
And they're a little bit banged up right now. And so, there's a handful of teams that have good offensive lines, I'd say, but for the most part, everybody's trying to just fill the gaps with all the injuries and try and figure it out, trying to keep the quarterbacks upright. Like, you have so many different variables happening across the NFL right now, and just football in general, where, defensive ends are so much more athletic, so much more, powerful and versatile than offensive linemen, generally speaking. You have college game is not really preparing these offensive linemen for the pros. They're not even doing the same types of blocks in college as they're doing in the pros, or footwork or handwork or anything. And so you got guys that are coming in and basically having to learn how to play offensive line all over again. And a lot of times the teams that have the best coaches are the best offensive line. So Yeah, I'd say the Eagles are the other team that have a really good offensive line, and they're the other, I'd say, like top team in terms of who comes to mind when I think of offensive lines.
Okay, so I don't know if you saw this. I did this little exercise on Twitter yesterday, and I wanted to see. I told people without looking it up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't know if you saw this.
I didn't see it yet.
Okay, well, thanks. Jeez, can you just lie and say you did? Son of a bitch.
I have you muted actually, so.
And I believe you.
I don't really.
Without looking this up, can you name the last Seahawks offensive lineman that made the Pro Bowl?
Oh, was it Okung? Max Unger?
Okay, you are partially correct, because I was going to ask you a second part. Because Russell Okung is the last offensive lineman drafted by John Schneider to make a Pro Bowl.
But he didn't do it with the Seahawks?
No, he did it, but it was in 2012.
Got it.
Okay, but the last Seahawks offensive lineman to make a Pro Bowl.
Dwayne Brown?
You got it.
Yeah.
Dwayne Brown, good job. 2021.
He was good, man. I loved him.
And I didn't realize, I went back, he played 4 years for him. I didn't realize that he had played that long. He was good for him, 17 through 21, and he was a Pro Bowler. But so this last guy that he actually drafted, and I think Cross eventually will get there. But the last guy,
Cross is a future All-Pro, I think.
Yeah, but 2012, Russell Okung, and then Dwayne Brown 2021. And I went through it, just a quick exercise of looking just at all the offensive linemen that he has picked, and there are some guys that have made it. I mean, I think we forget because of the Lucas injury, but Abe Lucas was on his way to being, and hopefully, fingers crossed, he comes back and he's going to be healthy. But Lucas was real good his rookie year. Yeah, you could make an argument Lucas was better than Cross's rookie year.
Yeah.
But, he's out, but Cross was a good pick. But then, a year later, you draft Anthony Bradford. Anthony Bradford looks like he's about to eat himself out of the league. Trust me, I understand what that's like. I can eat I can compete with anybody with eating. And he's just like, I mean, he doesn't look good, but, before Lucas and Cross, you got Stone Forsythe. That's a late draft pick. I get it. 19, you got Phil Haynes. 2018, you get Jamarco Jones. The 2 years that are just mind-boggling. Actually, it's 3 years in a row, but is 2017, you drafted Ethan Posick in the second round. And you know who they drafted in the third, or excuse me, that's in 16. And then 2016 to Jermaine Ifedi in the first round. Yeah. Is he out of the league?
I think he's still active. Let's see here. He plays for the Browns. But I don't think he's good. Certainly don't think he's good.
He's not good, Danny.
Postage is still in the league, too, for the Browns. Yeah. It's funny, all these guys go to the Browns and they look better, which, again, is kind of like my point. Coaching matters a lot.
Sure. And then do you remember who they took in the third round in 16? I mean, third round draft pick should be a starter, right?
Oh, that's hopefully, yeah. That's the idea. Reese Odiambo?
Yeah, Reese Odiambo.
I don't, he's not in the league anymore.
He can't be in the league. There's no way he's back in Boise working in security.
Yep.
Okay. And then 15, you draft Glowinski, who was nothing here.
Again, goes to the Colts, and he's pretty good.
And he goes to the Colts, and he's great. I mean, how do they have these guys where they hit on a few, but then for the most part, 2010 was Okung. The next year they draft James Carpenter in 11 in the first round. And the only thing I remember about James Carpenter when they drafted him in the first round 2011 was Nick Saban going, what? Why'd you do that? And I remember that draft night when he did that. I'm like, oh, God. Oh, no. Yeah. What'd we do wrong? Why is it? You said it's a league thing. Mm-hmm. But I watch the Seahawks play every week, and I go, well, that offensive line looks better than the Seahawks. Why has it been a struggle for John Schneider to nail this down?
Well, so I think there's obviously multiple reasons here. With James Carpenter, he got hurt immediately and missed training camp and/or like the first part of the season, and
like that seems toe injury or something.
I can't even remember.
I'm gonna look it up.
He got hurt, and then gained a bunch of weight. Came back, he was like out of shape. It basically set him back. Getting hurt early on set him back, multiple seasons. essentially. And it just never really worked out for him. At one point, he was like moved to guard, and he was looking promising for a hot minute there, and then just like didn't really pan out. And then I think you go past that, and you get into the Tom Cable era where they were trying to draft like defensive linemen who were just like good athletes, and like trying to convert them to offensive line. And
Sweezy,
in retrospect, in looking back, it's like Tom Cable didn't like coach those guys up the way that everyone thought he would. They had multiple offensive line coaches. They had Alex Gibbs was on the team for like a hot minute, and then he quit, and I don't even know what that was all about. So I think there's been like sort of a disconnect with coaching, drafting. The Jermaine Ifedi thing, I think people knew immediately that was going to be a bad pick. People knew before that pick happened he was going to be bad. I don't know why they picked him. I think it was just like a scarcity thing, possibly. And so I don't know, man. I honestly don't know. Like, some teams are really good at drafting certain positions, and the Seahawks are not good at drafting offensive linemen, or certainly haven't been. And I think it's like, honestly, some scouts have a position that they're better at, and some scouts are just not as good at certain positions. And the Seahawks, for whatever reason, whoever they have in their scouting department, just haven't really hit on the offensive linemen. So, but I think generally it's not just a Seahawks problem. I mean, like, if you look around the league, there's so many teams right now that have like totally effed up offensive lines, and even some of the good teams that draft offensive line, like the Saints, for instance, like their offensive line is a mess right now because they have multiple guys get hurt, and so it's a battle of attrition. It's a question of like how much you sink into the offensive line, how much you trust your coaching, and honestly, a lot of it is luck. Like, they happen to find a guy that's like really good and fit him in, and he stays healthy, and you have some continuity on the offensive line. So there's just a million variables at work here. But yeah, you're right. The Seahawks have just not drafted well at that position. I mean, I think like the Dwayne Brown trade is probably like the best move they made, other than I like the Charles Cross picks so far. Yeah.
I think. I mean, again, that's why. Again, he's not perfect. No GM or president's ever going to be perfect, right, Danny? But it's just like they feel like there are a lot more misses on the offensive line, than anybody else. They don't seem to want to spend any money when it comes to that as well. They prefer to spend their money elsewhere, and I just wonder at some point, does that philosophy change? I mean, it hasn't changed. I mean, he's been the GM, since what?
14 years?
14 years. So it's just something they don't like. They just don't like to spend money. And I'm trying to look this up, and because I think I'm right. You talk about the scouting department and people that look at offensive linemen, and I think Steve Hutchinson advises them on offensive linemen.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. I don't want to because I know he used to, and I want to see if he still does it. But like, he's the second best offensive lineman in the history of the organization.
Yeah.
He should be pretty good at identifying talent.
You would think, but also, I mean, like, look at John Elway. He wasn't the best at evaluating quarterbacks, let's be honest.
Fair.
Sometimes it's just, Michael Jordan wasn't like necessarily the best GM or whatever he was with the Wizards back in the day. So, yeah, I don't know. It's hard. I think, honestly, like, and I cover the draft. I do a draft guide for the Ringer, and I'm just like, half of these guys I'm going to be wrong on. Literally half of these guys, and the league is wrong on half of these guys.
Why,
in the first round.
Why are they wrong? Because we do see the games are closer than they've ever been. I mean, there's a lot of
parity.
Yeah, but there's a lot of college like game planning offensively that you see in the NFL. Like, so wouldn't the offensive lineman translate?
I think we're getting closer to that being the case. We're getting closer to teams running college-style offenses that like helps the offensive lineman kind of like hit the ground running a little bit quicker and feel more comfortable with what they're doing.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, like if you look at the splits, like a lot of offensive lines in college are like the splits are like you have guys standing like 2 or 3 feet away from each other, and that's totally different in the NFL.
Right.
You have guys that come into league and they've never really done like a true NFL pass set in terms of like what they're expected to block on the edge. So yeah, it's like a totally different game. It's weird, and while it is getting closer, it's like not the same at all. And also, it's like you're going up against the best player you ever faced an entire college career, like every week. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's like every NFL team has at least one good pass rusher. A lot of them have two or three, and so it's just harder. It's so much harder. And I think like. The NFL will get better at this. Like it's cyclical, of course. But right now, I think there's just a massive shortage of offensive linemen across the league.
When does he start feeling more heat, though, about it?
I think getting a new coach bought him some time. You talking about Schneider, I mean?
Yeah, and how much time do you think this buys him?
At least a year. 2 years, probably, at the very least.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking 2 years minimum. Sure.
Because I think McDonald.
And I don't want to run him out. I'm not trying to run John Schneider out, but at some point, if it's not getting any better, I just wonder if the top of the organization will make a move.
It's
I'm
funny
sorry
because,
I stepped on you. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I think it's like I think back to the Pete Carroll outro conference, whatever it was, like the firing conference, the weird press conference where he was like announced to be fired.
I still want to be here.
I don't know. There was like I can't remember a coach getting fired and then having a press conference before. Does that happen very often?
No, it never happens.
But he was essentially like, I don't know. I looked at it kind of like the Godfather, like I know it was you, Fredo, you broke my heart kind of thing. Like he's like talking to Schneider in the press conference, like it's your deal now, buddy. Yeah, like it's on you now. Good luck, because now everything, the buck stops at you, pal. Like you wanted this, and you moved the pieces behind the scenes. I don't know. I'm putting words into his mouth, of course.
No, but I think there is some of that. Sure, of course.
So, but at the end of the day, like I think McDonald is going to get a couple of years before people start to realize. Well, I mean, Seahawks fans, all fans are pretty reactionary week in and week out, but he'll get a couple of years. I think year 2 is when I think we'll see a big jump from this defense, hopefully.
Okay.
Because right now it still feels like people are learning what they're supposed to do, where they're supposed to be, how they're like, they're thinking rather than reacting, still trying to figure it all out. And I was going back and watching the Seahawks game from Thursday today, and I was just like, man, it's like they're so close.
Oh, they are.
They're so close to so many plays. It's the NFL, the margin for error is almost nothing. And you go back to that game, DK Metcalf, foot on the end line, toe on the end line early on in the game, just barely missed that. Like that could have changed the game. There was a couple of plays later on where they just barely missed in the end zone. I think there was one play to
Lockett.
JSN went to Lockett. And then the DK Metcalf 50-yard touchdown gets overturned later in the game. There's just like a handful of plays here or there, and this is a total cliche, I know that. But like they're closer than you think. Like it felt like a blowout in the moment.
Agreed.
But you go back and watch the game, and you're like, man, like they didn't play that poorly. They just missed a few tackles here and there, and a couple plays. Like it's the contrast between Kittle making that touchdown catch early in the third quarter with like barely got his feet in, a very high degree of difficulty catch, like draped, the defender's draped on him, makes that catch versus DK Metcalf, one toe on the end line out. Like that's the type of like plays that a good winning like high level team makes versus like just doesn't quite make. So I don't know. I do feel, I know I drink the Kool-Aid a little bit with McDonald, but I do think they're a little bit closer than people think. People are panicking a little bit, but I'm like, the offense is still pretty good. They came back again. They showed some fight late in the game, didn't get it done. And I think the defense is just, banged up and not executing quite as well as they could.
Yeah, they're not rolling over like the Cowboys did this past weekend against the Lions.
Yeah.
It is, amazingly how poorly that they did play in that game on Thursday was, 2 minutes to go. They got a shot to go win the game.
They're in the game.
And so it is, I agree with you. I think they have some deficiencies that are striking. They still cannot, as well as they were tackling week 1 against Denver.
Oh, God, it's so frustrating.
All of a sudden they can't tackle anymore. The run defense still remains an issue. Maybe, the acquisition that they did this week from the guy out of Jacksonville, which, by the way, you have to say his full name every time you say it because he sounds like some Southern lawyer. Roy Robertson Harris of Savannah, Georgia, here to represent my client who is innocent if you look at all the evidence. So Roy Robertson Harris.
Yeah.
So but they were right there. They were right there. So I don't think they never were as good as the start of the season when they were 3-0.
Yeah.
But nor do I think they've lost these 3 games. They're as bad as losing the last 3.
Yeah, totally agree. And again, it's like, I think, it's easy to overreact game in and game out to like, and this is like, it's a long season. Yeah. Like they look like crap this game. They look better this game. This is like every team in the NFL does this. Like almost every team. Like there's very few teams in the NFL that like look really consistent week in and week out. For the most part, it's a really hard league to win in. There's an incredible amount of parity, and one team that looks really good one week will look like crap the next, and it's like very common. This is every fan base is going through this almost. Like, just bear that in mind. I'm not like excusing the Seahawks playing bad, but I'm just saying, like, if you watch the entire NFL, and I'm sure a lot of people do, but like, it's like, dude, this happens to every team almost. And I would say, keep that in mind. The other thing to keep in mind, this was a Thursday night game against a division opponent, which is like, throw everything out Thursday night, first of all, and then it's a division opponent, and anything can happen. It's just like these games are always weird.
And I don't think the schedule makers and maybe other teams go through this, Danny, and I'm sure they do. I don't think they did them any favors. That is too many games. They played 3 games in a 10-day span.
Yeah,
I mean that is just insane.
Yeah, especially for a team that's already banged up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like again, I'm an optimist at heart, and
that's why you're still a Mariners fan.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I'm just doing this for tradition, but I go back and watch that game. I'm like, Geno, for whatever reason, missed a few big throws.
Yeah.
I still am a big Geno believer. I think the offense has some really interesting wrinkles to it that I'm really, really enjoying. I think, they do these inside screenplays, the middle screens. I think there's a lot of like potential there, especially if they get Kenneth Walker more involved in the passing game because he's just so good after the catch. Like they can keep defenses on their heels. I really like sort of like the foundation of this offense, and I think they're closer to being really good than people think. Right now, they're not really good, but it's just like it's not like a huge jump that they need to make to be like a pretty good team in this league. So
I don't know how much you get into lines. Do you get into that on the Ringer shows at all?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, a little bit, but not like I'm not like an expert by any means.
I'm surprised Atlanta's only a 3-point favorite. I don't know. I don't really quite understand that.
Vegas tends to know what they're talking about. Is the thing
they always do.
We have this bit on our show that's kind of like, what do you know, Vegas? What do you know?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you look at a line and you're like, I don't know what the hell they're thinking.
I'm actually going to steal that.
Go for it, yeah. But yeah, it's like, I think Vegas knows like probably exactly what I'm saying. Is like the Seahawks are a little closer than you think. They're not like a bad team by any means. We don't need to blow it all up and start from scratch. I think you just need to get marginally better. Get better on the margins. It's like any Bill Belichick team is just like during the heydays, like they're just better than everyone in the margins, and that's why they're so dominant forever. They weren't like this great team every single season. They're just better in the margins.
Yeah,
and I think the Seahawks are a little too undisciplined for my liking. I liked early on in the season they felt more disciplined. Lately, just flags, just so many flags.
Did you see the Tyler Lockett comment this week? I think actually it's been played this week, but I think it was after the game.
No, I didn't see it. What he said?
We need to take walkthroughs more seriously.
There you go.
That was kind of telling, and I don't like to hear that from a new staff.
Yeah, I think at the same time though, like I like that from Lockett. I like a little bit of like like shoot a whatever off the bow, a shot off the bow just for the young players. I think obviously like we talked about DK Metcalf I think last week or the week before. It's like, man, I wish
talk about him again this week if you want.
Jeez, just come on, man.
It's just
the details. You have the potential to be so great.
I know.
Just get the details down.
Can't help himself.
But yeah, I like hearing that from Lockett. And I think you have a whole new coaching staff, and I think McDonald made a point of having guys that came from different group. Like it wasn't like just all his buddies that he brought in.
Right.
So maybe they're still working out the kinks and ironing everything out. But yeah, I think that's cool to hear from Lockett. I think get these guys a little more disciplined, detail oriented. It's clear they're not right now. I mean, you watch just mistakes and flags and too many penalties and too many God, the illegal formation penalties and illegal
That's what
shifts.
he was getting at. He was getting at we are making the unforced errors before the snaps even made.
Pre-snap penalties should just not be a thing. These guys are pros. It's so annoying. It's an epidemic across the league. Don't get me wrong. Another thing where it's like every game I watch, I'm like, so many plays getting called back from illegal formation or illegal shift. I'm like, come on, guys. But yeah. That's an interesting comment from Lockett. I like that.
Well, Aaron, other news. Let's switch gears to other just news and notes around the league. Aaron Rodgers gets a coach fired, and then Aaron Rodgers is able to pull off a trade for a wide receiver in Davante Adams. I mean, for a guy who says, "quote People think I have all this power. I don't think they overestimate that. He sure has got a lot of power within that Jets organization."
What I would say if I was like shadow managing a team, It's exactly what a shadow manager would say. I don't have that much power.
I don't have that much power. I just fired the head coach, and I got them to pull off a trade for Davante Adams. How much better does it make the Jets?
I think it makes them better for sure. Does it make them good enough? I don't know. I mean, the Jets are like, I've been saying this all year. The Jets are like one last job. You know, like the movie trope, like one last job.
Yep.
It's like you got all these old offensive linemen that they signed during the offseason. You bring in Mike Williams, who, by the way, is another guy that Aaron Rodgers has just chucked to the waste bin. There was a joke going around last night. I thought it was hilarious. You know how when Saleh got fired, there was like a big graphic, escorted out of the building by security. It's like after Mike Williams ran the wrong route, then Aaron Rodgers throws him under the bus in the post-game presser. There's just like this graphic going around, Mike Williams escorted out by security. And then immediately they transfer Davante Adams, and now Mike Williams is on the trade block. So, yeah, you tell me if Aaron Rodgers has any sway with what they're doing.
It's amazing. And then for Woody Johnson to come out. We talked the night before, but we didn't talk anything. We didn't talk anything about firing Robert Saleh, which is I mean, come on. Obviously that they did. And then you got another trade in the NFL. You got Amari Cooper is going to the Buffalo Bills.
Oh, did this just happen?
For a 3rd and 7th round draft pick. I mean, God, you gotta love that for Joshie Allen.
Yeah, that's great.
He needed somebody.
It was like pretty apparent, I think, over the last few weeks that they were just really missing that big-time game-changing type of receiver. I think Khalil Shakur is really good, and I think he can be a very good role player. But Keon Coleman, work in progress. He's a rookie. That's expected for him to be a little bit, just unreliable, I'd say is the right word. He's got some explosive ability, but he's unreliable. And then Curtis Samuel has just not done anything really of note. And Mac Hollins is getting like significant number of targets. Like you need an upgrade in this receiver core. I'm not just talking from like a fantasy point of view. I just think it helps. And so this is a really interesting trade. I wonder, like
a great move.
He's up there in terms of like skill set as a route runner. Obviously, he's got some like injury history, but he's up there with like Stephon Diggs. I think this is like a really interesting trade for him.
It's been a really wild week in the NFL. I mean, just honestly,
I love trades.
The trades, you got probably the most horrific officiating performance maybe in the National Football League on Monday night. The Jets and the Bills, where there was a flag on every play, and the guys, there's so many flags. One of the lead officials turning the wrong way on the TV and giving out a flag. Jerry Jones post game, and then Jerry Jones goes on a Dallas morning radio show because he does a show every week on a Dallas morning station, 105.3 The Fan. My buddy Gavin works there, and I mean, he's
threatening to fire them.
He's threatening them like, you keep asking me these questions, you sons of bitches, I'll fire you, because that's where the Cowboys are on.
Oh my God.
I'm all for it. You got that. You got Jim Harbaugh's leaving the sideline. He's got heart arrhythmia, and then he's in the post game talking about, I had this last time. The Niners, when I was coaching the Niners, I think Monday Night Football. Colin Kaepernick had a really good game. We won that game. We won today, so I'm 2-0 with heart arrhythmia. Wait a minute. I don't know if you should be bragging,
dude,
that you've got heart arrhythmia problems and you're 2-0. And then you got Nick Siriani. He's going after Eagle fans.
I love this.
And then to protect himself in the post game, he brings his kids up there.
Classic.
So no one asks him any tough questions. You got Aiden Hutchinson breaks his leg. He's out for the
brutal.
season. I mean, what? Just a week, man. A week of content. Come on.
Lemon, it's Tuesday. Yeah, there's
it's unbelievable how much stuff is out there.
Oh man. Yeah, this is great. The NFL is like perfectly constructed. They've evolved over the years to just capture our attention literally all the time. Every single day.
Yeah.
There's something happening all year round. There's basically like a 1 month period in the middle of the summer where like nothing happens, but otherwise, man, they have our attention every single day. It's such a good league. I love this league.
You think when Jerry Jones is yelling at those two radio hosts, that those radio hosts are like, shit, man. When we just threatened our jobs, maybe we should back off just a little bit. What do you think that meeting was like with their program director right after that show ended? Hey, are we going to get replaced?
Like on one hand, it's like you like any press is good press, I guess, is like the idea, but also, yeah, I don't know. That's first of all, it's hilarious that they goaded him into saying that on the radio.
Oh.
Jerry Jones, my God, he's 82 years old. 82 years old. He's older than Biden.
They make as much sense, honestly.
Yeah.
It's the best thing he should do is just give it all up. I mean, not the ownership, but just give up the day-to-day stuff and let someone come in and run it.
My co-host, and he says this fully joking, fully tongue-in-cheek, but he joked the other day, he's like, his kids should kill him.
Oh, like a full Menendez brothers, huh?
Yeah. It's a Menendez brothers.
Don't start that Netflix series late at night, kids. Just don't do it. For someone who started that show at 11 o'clock at night a few weeks ago, don't do it. It's
a little bit creepy.
You won't be able to sleep. You won't be able to. Yeah, don't do it. Before we let you go, give us it's a Tuesday. It's a fantasy football waiver pickup. This is a big day for fantasy football players. What do we got? What do we know?
I'll just run through a couple of running backs first. Tyrone Tracy for the Giants, as the Seahawks fans know, looked pretty darn good. And there's already whispers that he might be the lead back going forward for this team. Obviously, Devin Singletary will be back at some point, but he looked good enough to have established himself a bigger role. Tank Bigsby for the Jags might just be taking over the lead job for Travis Etienne, especially with Etienne dealing with a hammy. Sean Tucker for the Buccaneers looked pretty darn good this
Unbelievable.
weekend. Out of nowhere. I've
never even heard of him.
How bad is Rachaad White? The minute Rachaad White is out of the lineup, the Buccaneers run for like 300 yards. So keep that guy in mind. Ty Chandler for the Vikings. If Aaron Jones can't play this week, he's going to get a bigger role. For receivers, Juju Smith-Schuster, we're doing it again. We're running the Juju Smith-Schuster thing back. You love him. 27 years old. It feels like he's been in the league for a decade here, but 27 years old. It seems like he has kind of settled into this Rashee Rice role. I don't know if it's super reliable week in and week out, but it's obviously a valuable role. So check out him on the waiver wire if he's out there. I think he's definitely worth an ad. Josh Downs for the Colts looks really good. Demario Douglas for the Patriots. With Drake May starting for the Patriots, he was like by far the number one target, 30% target rate. So he's a guy that I'm definitely keeping in mind. And then at tight end, I don't know, don't bother. There's no good tight ends in the NFL. No Fant, I guess, or Taysom Hill.
Yeah, there are no good tight ends.
It's tough. It's like I've been kind of preaching this for a couple of years now. It's like a lot of NFLs have sort of transitioned to more like 3 receiver sets, like 11 personnel is really big. And it's like, who are you going to throw to? Like a big lumbering slow guy or the really explosive, agile, fast guy?
Well, it goes back to our conversation just about college football and then linemen. I mean, there's hardly any college football teams using tight ends anymore.
Totally. It's like a handful of teams, Iowa. I mean, there's definitely still some teams that utilize tight end pretty significantly.
White Midwestern teams, Danny.
Yeah. But generally speaking, like the more offenses spread out and the more you get specialized in like 3 receiver sets and slot receivers, and it's like it's just harder to. I think teams are just going away from having tight ends be the number 1 or number 2 option in their offense. It just doesn't happen as much anymore. So.
All right, I got one more before we let you go. Are you surprised that Tomlin is going to turn to Wilson this weekend?
Yeah, I am kind of surprised.
I'm stunned by this.
It was like always kind of a thing where if Justin Fields falters terribly and they start losing, they would go back to Russell Wilson. Why change something when things are going pretty well?
They're winning, and he's not lighting everyone on fire, but they're winning, and he's a part of it. And I just don't understand why they're doing. Their offensive line is bad.
Yeah. And I don't. So like, I would say this: Russell Wilson and Justin Fields coming into the season, very similar styles of play, other than Justin Fields has legs that he can run with. But otherwise, like, they take a lot of sacks, they hold on to the ball too long. You get yourself behind the stick, you get yourself into third and longs a lot. It's just like not a super like viable way to run an offense. I will say though, Justin Fields has looked a lot better this year in terms of managing the pocket, getting rid of the football quickly, taking care of the football, not taking too many sacks. And he adds something in the run game that Russell Wilson simply cannot do. And so, it is a little bit confusing because if Russell Wilson comes in and takes like 6 or 7 sacks in this next game, I mean, I'm just going to be here to tell you I told you so, because I think that like that just is so hard to run an offense that way. I mean, we watched that for years with Russell Wilson when he was really elusive, and now he's not really elusive, and he just takes way too many sacks. Yeah. And so it just makes things really, really hard for an offense. If he can, maybe he looks a little different than he did last year in this upcoming game, but I'll be kind of surprised if that's the case.
There he is, talking all things NFL, Seahawks, fantasy football. Danny Kelly. Follow him on Twitter, Danny B. Kelly, senior staff writer, Ringer Fantasy Football Show, Ringer NFL Draft Show. It's all brought to you by Georgetown Brewery, locally owned and operated by Manny and Roger, 2 diehard Husky fans. They've got beers named after him: Manny's Pale Ale, Rogers Pilsner, Lucille Bodie's Awful. They've got great beer selection, and their tap room is open 7 days a week from 10 in the morning to 8 p.m. Visit them at georgetownbeer.com. In case you missed any of this as you came in late or want to watch it all over again, everything's up on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment there on YouTube. Also, check it out on Apple and Spotify, and, of course, up at pucksports.com. Danny, we'll talk to you next week. Thank you.
Sounds good.